On October 25th, Ukrainian units continued offensive operations near Bakhmut, although there were no perceived or confirmed advances in the region. The statement of the Ukrainian General Staff emphasized that these actions were directed towards Bakhmut. Volodymyr Zelensky, a spokesman for the Ukrainian ground forces with the rank of lieutenant colonel, had reported the day before, on October 24th, about offensive Ukrainian operations in the area of Klishchevka, located 7 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut, and Andriivka, located 10 kilometers in the same direction. He also mentioned clashes in the Kromov area, immediately west of the aforementioned Bakhmut. In turn, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that their forces responded to Ukrainian attacks in the vicinity of Maloy Linivka, which is located 4 kilometers north of Bakhmut, Andriivka, Kurdyumovka, 13 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut, and Pianich, which is 20 kilometers southwest from the city. During the next day, October 25th, Russian forces made unsuccessful attempts at a ground attack near Bakhmut. According to information provided by the Ukrainian General Staff, Ukrainian units successfully repelled these attacks near towns such as Bodanivka and Ivanovsky, both 6 kilometers from Bakhmut, as well as the previously mentioned Klishchevka and Andriivka. Russian military bloggers reported that Russian forces mounted a counterattack near Berkovka, located 4 kilometers north of Bakhmut. Footage from that day, presented by Russian sources, allegedly showed the actions of the 58th Spetsnaz Brigade of the 1st Corps of the Donetsk People's Republic Army heading towards Bakhmut. On October 26th, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky finalized a law aimed at better monitoring the financial situation of people holding key positions in the country's political structures. This is an important action in the context of Ukraine's efforts to integrate with the European Union. The new regulations extend the period of control of such people's finances from the previous 3 years until the end of their lives. The aim of this action is to combat corruption among people in power who, due to their position, may be more exposed to such practices. This decree was approved by the Ukrainian Verkhovna Rada on October 17th, when 276 deputies voted in favor of its adoption. The amended regulations are intended to deter officials from abusing their position for personal enrichment. They increase supervision over their financial situation even after they cease to hold public office. According to MP Jaroslaw Zalesniak, the new act meets the expectations of the International Monetary Fund. He emphasized that this is a key moment in the context of future talks on closer cooperation between Ukraine and the European Union. Some media sources suggest that the European Commission intends to positively assess the reforms introduced in Ukraine in the near future. Information provided by Politico indicates that European leaders may decide to start formal accession negotiations with Ukraine as early as December. On October 25th, Russian forces began offensive operations near Avdiivka, achieving confirmed successes. According to geolocation footage published the day before, Russian units were moving northwest from the Krasnohorivka area, 5 kilometers northwest of Avdiivka. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that the Russians unsuccessfully attacked in the vicinity of the town of Stepovka, located 3 kilometers northwest of Avdiivka, as well as in Avdiivka itself, Tonenka, Severny, and Novelsky. Colonel Oleksandr Shtupun, spokesman for the Ukrainian group of forces Tavrisk, noted that the frequency of Russian attacks in the Avdiivka area has decreased. Prominent Russian mill bloggers emphasized at the time that Russian forces had achieved a significant tactical victory in the vicinity of Avdiivka and Stepa. However, both Russian forces and certain Ukrainian military observers insisted that the Russians controlled the Avdiivka dump, although Vitaly Barabash, head of the Ukrainian military administration of the city of Avdiivka, denied this information, calling the dump a gray zone in terms of control. Some Ukrainian sources also suggested the presence of the Wagner group in the vicinity of Avdiivka, although there was no confirmation of this presence. On October 23rd, a Ukrainian reserve officer revealed satellite photos which showed that between October 10th and 20, the Russian army suffered the loss of over 109 military vehicles in the vicinity of Avdiivka. Most of the destroyed vehicles were armored fighting vehicles such as BMP-1, BMP-DDUA, and MTLB, as well as BTR armored personnel carriers. According to the officer, these losses were much greater than those suffered by the Russians during the unsuccessful crossing of the Seversky Donets River in May 2022, and may even exceed losses in the Vuhledar area from November 2022 to April 2023. According to a reserve officer, actual losses may be even greater. In turn, a Russian mill blogger reported that on October 24th, Ukrainian forces carried out a successful counterattack near Berdych, driving out Russian forces from there. On October 26th, during his video address to European Union leaders during the two-day European Council meeting in Brussels, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized the need to develop a coherent, long-term strategy to counter Russia's aggressive intentions. Zelensky stressed that Russia should understand that its imperial ambitions are not stronger than Ukraine's determination to defend its independence. He noted that while European unity has recently faced some challenges, such as the growing popularity of populist parties in Europe, and the changing attitude of some American Republicans towards support for Ukraine, the key values that unite the nations of Europe, such as respect for life and respect for the sovereignty of others' countries, remain unchanged. Zelensky expressed gratitude to Ukraine's allies, pointing to their continued support, both military and financial. In this context, he singled out the actions of Belgium, which seeks to use confiscated Russian funds to help Ukraine. Commenting on the new 12th package of sanctions against Russia, the president of Ukraine emphasized that it should be more restrictive than the previous ones and effectively prevent Russia from circumventing these restrictions. Zelensky pointed out that circumventing sanctions has become one of Russia's priorities, and this should be counteracted. Additionally, information from last week suggests that European Union leaders have started discussions on introducing a new package of sanctions, which is intended to prevent Russia from avoiding their effects and to ban the import of Russian diamonds. On October 25th, Russian troops began combat operations southwest of Donetsk. Information provided by the Ukrainian General Staff indicates that Russian attacks were directed towards Marinka, located immediately southwest of Donetsk Pobeda, 5 kilometers southwest of that city, and Novomychailovka, 10 kilometers in the same direction from Donetsk. These actions took place on October 25th. On the same day, Ukrainian forces carried out neither alleged nor documented attacks on the sector southwest of Donetsk. Additionally, the Ukrainian General Staff reported that on October 25th, Russian troops undertook unsuccessful combat operations in the vicinity of Vodyane, which is located 5 kilometers northeast of Vuhledar. On October 25th, Ukrainian troops continued their efforts to regain territories in the western part of the Zaporizhia Oblast, achieving some successes in this respect. Geolocation materials published the day before show that Ukrainian forces have recorded progress in the area west of Robotyne. According to information provided by the Ukrainian General Staff, offensive operations were also carried out towards Melitopol, located in the western part of the Zaporizhia Oblast. Ukrainian forces had some successes around Verbov, which is 9 kilometers west of Robotyne. Military experts from Ukraine noted that Russian troops had withdrawn from the area northwest of Novoprokopivka, 3 kilometers south of Robotyne. Nevertheless, there is no visual evidence yet to confirm these observations. In turn, the Russian side, including the Russian Ministry of Defense, presents a different picture of the situation. According to them, Russian troops successfully repelled attacks by Ukrainian mechanized troops in the Robotyne, Novoprokopivka, and Verbove areas. A Russian informant who runs a military blog reported that on the night of October 24, 25, 2 Ukrainian special units reached Russian positions near Verbov before being repelled by them. On October 25th, Russian sources reported that Ukrainian military units had undertaken more intense operations than usual on the eastern bank of the Kherson Oblast. According to these sources, Ukrainian forces secured several strategic points in the area, including the town of Krinky, located 30 kilometers northeast of Kherson Oblast and 2 kilometers from the Dnieper River, and the area around the railway and road bridges in Antonivka. A well-known Russian blogger specializing in military affairs, observing the activities along the Dnieper River, pointed out that troops from the Russian Marine Brigade of the Black Sea Fleet took control of Krinky from Ukrainian troops. He also added that the Ukrainian army resumed intensive ground operations from the swamp area north of Oleski, which lies 7 kilometers south of Kherson and 4 kilometers from the Dnieper River, on the night of October 23rd to 24th. According to the same blogger, Russian forces successfully stopped Ukrainian assault units that sought to take control of the towns Pishchenivka, 14 kilometers east of Kherson and 3 kilometers from the Dnieper, Poymy, 12 kilometers east of Kherson and 4 kilometers from the Dnieper River, and Pidstepny, 18 kilometers east of Kherson and 4 kilometers from the Dnieper River. In one case, a Ukrainian assault group reached the northern part of Pishchenivka but was driven out by the Russians. Another military expert suggested that Ukrainian units were approaching Pidstepny from the railway bridge in Antonivka. Nevertheless, the Institute for War Studies, ISW, did not confirm the presence of any evidence indicating the advance of Ukrainian forces on the eastern bank. Only a few Russian sources report intensified activities of Ukrainian troops in this region.